You may have noticed something strange. When you are struggling in life, when you are failing, almost everyone around you feels sympathy for you, and people are quick to offer support. But the moment you start winning, the moment success knocks on your door, the same people who once stood by you suddenly create distance. Some become openly jealous, some start downplaying your achievements, some quietly stop replying to your messages, and a few even begin speaking against you behind your back. It can feel confusing and even painful, especially when it comes from people you trusted. Why does this happen? The answer to this question was actually given almost 150 years ago by a German philosopher named Friedrich Nietzsche, long before social media or modern success culture even existed. In this video, we are going to break down Nietzsche's philosophy in detail and understand exactly why people start resenting you the moment you begin winning. Friedrich Nietzsche was one of the most controversial and powerful philosophers of the 19th century. In his most important work, On the Genealogy of Morality, he introduced a concept he called ressentiment. This is a French word, and its meaning is slightly different from ordinary resentment. According to Nietzsche, ressentiment is the feeling that builds up inside a weak or powerless person when they look at someone strong, successful, or powerful. Since this person cannot express their frustration directly because they lack the power to do so, they convert their jealousy into an entire moral system instead. In other words, whatever they themselves failed to achieve, they label as bad or wrong, simply to feel better about themselves. To explain this concept, Nietzsche used a fascinating example involving birds of prey and lambs. The lambs believe that the bird of prey, which hunts them, is evil, while whoever is weak and harmless like themselves is good. But the bird of prey is genuinely confused by this judgment, because for it, hunting is simply its nature, its strength. This exact dynamic plays out between human beings as well. When someone moves ahead in life because of their hard work, talent, or confidence, the people who get left behind often label that person's strength as arrogance or selfishness, simply because they themselves could not reach that level. Nietzsche built on this idea by dividing morality into what he called master morality and slave morality. Master morality belongs to people who are confident, who believe in their own strength, and who define good on their own terms through power, achievement, courage, and excellence. Slave morality, on the other hand, belongs to people who see themselves as weak, and to justify that weakness, they declare humility modesty, and everyone is equal as good, while labeling ambition, confidence, and success as bad or even evil. When you start winning, you automatically shift toward master morality, and for people still trapped in slave morality, your success becomes a painful reminder of their own shortcomings. And it is this very feeling that gives birth to resentment inside them. Another important concept Nietzsche introduced is herd mentality. Nietzsche argued that most people think the way a herd thinks. They are afraid to think independently, afraid to take risks, and as a result, they want everyone around them to remain at the same mediocre level as themselves. When an individual breaks away from this herd, builds their own identity, and fully uses their potential to rise above the average crowd, the herd cannot tolerate it. They try to pull that person back into the herd, sometimes through mockery, sometimes through gossip, and sometimes simply by ignoring their achievements. Nietzsche was deeply critical of this herd mentality, believing that it holds back the growth of humanity as a whole. Here is an interesting historical fact. Nietzsche himself experienced this exact kind of resentment firsthand during his own lifetime. Books like Thus Spoke Zarathustra and Beyond Good and Evil were not particularly successful while he was alive. The academic world did not take him seriously, and he even had to pay out of his own pocket to publish some of his work. Yet after his death in 1900, his philosophy went on to shake the foundations of Western thought, influencing psychology, literature, and even politics. In a way, Nietzsche himself became a living example of the very herd mentality he wrote about. People who think ahead of their time are often misunderstood by their contemporaries, and sometimes undervalued or rejected, simply because their thinking falls outside the herd's comfort zone. So how should you deal with all of this? Nietzsche's philosophy actually offers an answer, and it is found in his concept of the will to power. Nietzsche believed that every human being carries a natural drive to overcome themselves, to break their own limits, and to keep becoming better. When you follow this will to power, when you focus on your own growth instead of worrying about what others think of you, you free yourself from the opinions of people who only want to pull you down because of their own resentment. Nietzsche's famous concept of the Übermensch, or overman, is built on this very idea, a person who creates their own values, who refuses to be confined by the limitations society tries to impose, and who instead carves out their own path. It is important to understand that when people grow jealous of you or criticize your success, it does not mean you are doing something wrong. In fact, it usually means you have moved ahead of them, and their own insecurities are surfacing as a result. According to Nietzsche, people who are genuinely strong and confident are never threatened by someone else's success. They either respect it or simply move on without giving it much thought. It is only those who are dissatisfied with their own lives who treat someone else's winning as proof of their own failure. This pattern is sometimes described casually today as tall poppy syndrome, the idea that the tallest flower in the field gets cut down first, simply because it stands out from the rest. While that phrase itself is not something Nietzsche coined, it captures his core insight perfectly. The crowd does not necessarily hate excellence itself. What it cannot tolerate is being reminded, through someone else's success, of its own stagnation. That is why praise often comes easily when you are struggling, because at that stage you pose no threat to anyone's self-image. But the moment you rise, you unintentionally hold up a mirror to everyone who chose comfort over growth, and not everyone is ready to face that reflection. So the next time you are winning and someone tries to bring you down or quietly distances themselves from you, remember that this is their own internal struggle, not yours. Nietzsche's core teaching is this: define your own values, stop waiting for the herd's approval, and keep improving yourself by following your will to power. Jealousy and resentment will always exist because they are simply part of human nature. But the real question is whether you let other people's opinions stop your growth, or whether you choose your own path, the way a true overman would. If you enjoyed this video and want to go deeper into Nietzsche's philosophy, make sure to subscribe to the channel and hit the bell icon, so you don't miss future videos where we break down powerful philosophical ideas that can genuinely change the way you see your own life.